Okay, this is just a short little run through of how to use my camera controller um, package. So I've just got a little scene here already, just with a platform and a capsule. Now, of course, what is very important is that you have your camera in the scene. You need your main camera. So we're going to go over to the main camera and we're going to put in the camera move script. Now it's going to ask us a few things here, but we'll have a quick look at the script. As you can see here, it's got all the uh, public slots here. So it's got a public list, so you can actually put in your camera locations, which we'll get to in a bit. It needs the transform of the camera lock, which in this case is just going to be an empty game object in the middle of whatever object you want to look at. In this case, if you're looking at a whole diorama, you probably want to place it in the middle of your diorama. So that way, no matter where the camera faces, it's always looking towards the center. Then, of course, there's the transform of the camera. So it actually needs the position and rotation of the camera itself, as well as, using the camera as a lens. Then down here, we've got a public float for a delta and a public integer for the current camera slot. Now, the delta is essentially the speed in which the camera moves to the camera slot. As you can see here in lines 24 and 25, this is actually a short little algorithm, I suppose, um, that essentially makes it so that the camera can fly from each individual camera slot, but it also looks very smooth. So using the lerp function here that I'm just circling, it's going to make it fly in, but it's going to slow down as it gets to its location. Essentially, the delta is very much that kind of speed slash time it takes to get to that camera slot. The default it's going to be set at is 1, which is going to work for the vast majority of people, but obviously you are more than welcome to experiment with it. So what we're going to do is on our main camera, we've got our camera script in here. But before we start filling these out just yet, we're going to make a series of camera slots. So in this case, uh, just create a bunch of empty slots or empty game objects rather, and face them around the diorama. So we're going to have one here up on a diagonal angle. We're going to rename this camera slot default. We're then going to create another empty game object. We'll call this camera slot 1. Position it so that it is somewhat towards the center here. Have it move all the way up. And then on our X, we'll just make this negative 180. And then we'll do, let's just, for the sake of this, do one more from the side. Camera slot 2. Move it over here. There we go. So now we've got our series of camera slots. We've got our default one, which it kind of looks from a diagonal angle here, a bird's eye view, and a side-on shot. So let's go back to our main camera, always remembering to save as we go. Yes, that's a very important one here. We need the camera lock. So again, just create another empty game object. In this case, let's just call it camera lock. And then let's slide this through the center. There we go. So back to our main scene, saving as we go. In this case, we'll drag our camera lock into the camera lock section, main camera into camera, which is for the transform, and then into cam here for the actual lens. And then let's switch this delta to 1. Let's open up our camera slots here. Let's open up 3 of them. So our default is going to be 0, of course, remembering that everything starts at 0. Camera slot 1 is going to be element 1. Camera slot 2 is going to be element 2. So if we go ahead and hit play, of course, waiting for it to take a bit of time, we can see that that it had that little slide from where its default position was, when the scene starts, into our first, or into camera slot 0. So down here in the bottom right where it says camera slot 0, if we get rid of that and go camera slot 1, it's going to move to our bird's eye view. And if we change it to 2, it's going to give it our side on. But notice how whenever we press backspace, it always goes to camera slot 0. That's why we've, in this case, called it our camera slot default. So let's go ahead and exit out of there. Now, that is the first part, which is actually making it so that you can have the camera fly to wherever you like. But the next part is the UI. So we're going to go ahead, going to go into UI down here. I'm going to click on button. Of course, you're going to need to load the TextMesh Pro Essentials. So make sure you get those all imported in like so. Okay, now those are all inserted. We've got this that says button here. So we're going to come all the way out for the sake of making this easy. What we're going to do is we're going to move this up here. And if we open up the canvas and where it says button into text TMP, go to this big text box here, just erase that and make it say default. And then what we're going to do is Control C, Control V. That's going to make a second. And that's going to make a third. In this case, let's open those up as well. Let's go here. Let's make this cam 1. And here, cam 2. So that, of course, sets up the actual buttons on our UI. So if we, making sure, once again, hitting the save button, if we go ahead and hit the play button, you can see how they come up here on the side. Now, let's exit out of there. Now we need our second part, which is if we just go ahead and close those all, collapse them, and just for the sake of this, renaming this to Cam1 default and Cam2. If we click on the button, making sure it's the button itself, not the TextMesh Pro, we're going to go ahead down here and drag in our button UI script. Whoa, there we go. So what we're going to look at here is if we open up the button UI script over here, it's got 2 slots. In this case, one for the camera move script, which of course will drag the camera onto because it has the camera move script, and then the public integer slot, which is the target camera slot. In this case, you're going to make sure that, in this case, if you have the default button, that integer is set to 0, cam1 is set to 1, cam2 is set to 2, so on and so forth. And then essentially down here, with this on get component button script, when you click on the button, it actually activates it. So in this case, it changes the camera slot to whatever the assigned integer is for that button. So let's go ahead, come back here. In this case, we'll drag in our main camera, which has the camera script on it. Target camera slot 0 is perfect. We don't need to change that. Scroll down again, add the button UI to cam 1. If it would like to, there we go. Change that to 1. Cam 2, drag that one on in here, make that camera 2. Hitting save once again. So now, once we hit play, as you can see, it starts off at default. We hit the cam. Oh, apologies, I have made a very stupid mistake. I have switched the target camera slot in Cam 1 and Cam 2, but I have not added the appropriate main camera script. So I'll go ahead and make sure those are dragged in. Hopefully you guys caught that ahead of me. We'll go ahead and drag that in, hitting save once again, hit the play button, and hopefully things should work properly now. So fly in, hit camera 1, goes to camera 1, hit camera 2, moves to camera 2. We can then bring it back to camera 1 here. We can go back to camera 2, from camera 2 to default. And of course, you can add as many camera slots as you like. Of course, just making sure that not only do you add them in the main camera script, but you are also making appropriate buttons and assigning the correct integers. Now, of course, that is essentially the basics of this one, but obviously with whatever project you'll be doing, you guys are doing the uh, art pipeline, so you guys are probably far more creative than myself. So obviously, if we go ahead and select each of these buttons, you have the option to change any of the UI sprites, colors, fonts as well, make it much better. But yes, that is very much the basics of using this script. That is all.